Hello, everybody, and welcome to hashtag No Limits. Hashtag No Limits is about people who society has placed limits upon and who have busted through those limits. I am your host, Shelley Kenow. Ophelia says in Hamlet that we know who we are, but not what we will become. And I believe that to be 100% true, and that there is no better example of that than the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. For anyone who doesn't know, the caterpillar literally dissolves into cells and then reforms into the butterfly in the cocoon. That probably isn't easy, but it's not done struggling yet. It's not done fighting. It has to work its way out of the cocoon on its own in order for its wings to be strong enough to fly. And so that's one of the main reasons that I think it's such a good example of we know what we are, but not what we will be. And today I have Vittorio, and I didn't ask how to pronounce the last name, so I hope I don't butcher it. Calabrese?
That's good. Perfect.
Is that close?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. I don't speak Spanish or Italian, but I'm thinking that it's Italian.
Yep. I was born in
Okay.
Italy. I was 6 years old when I came here.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So let me just do one more quick businessy thing here. If you're watching live, give us a hashtag live and where you're watching from. If you are watching this in replay, give it a hashtag replay and where you're watching from. If you are watching live or in the replay, please put in any questions or comments that you might have for Vittorio. If you're watching it live, I can certainly show him right away and he can respond to it right away. If you do this in the replay, I can make sure that he gets them and responds to you later. So enough from me. Vittorio, thank you for joining me today. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to learn about your journey. So give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah, like I started saying before, I'm an immigrant from Italy. I was 6 years old. I came to this country. My mom brought us here. My dad ended up coming a year later, but came to this country not knowing English, just speaking Italian. And then little by little, kind of worked my way through school and eventually started my own businesses.
Businesses, plural. Okay, so two things. So we do have Fran watching. So howdy, Fran. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. And so you said you came to America and you didn't understand any English. And at the age that you said you came, you probably were put into a school pretty shortly after you arrived to the US. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I got super lucky. I got to tell you, God was on my side because I ended up sitting next to a young kid that spoke both Italian and English. So he
Wow.
would help me through. But because you're right, I came and I mean, I ended up learning English watching cartoons, right? Because at that young age, there's not many ways that you end up learning. We learn fast as children,
Right.
but it was tough. I also have undiagnosed dyslexia, so it was really hard for me to pick up any kind of written, any kind of reading. It was something that was always a challenge for me. So between those two things, like I said, I got really lucky. I had a great friend that helped me through, the first grade, which I ended up repeating. So I actually had first grade in Italy, then came to this country and had to repeat first grade because of where I was starting from.
Sure. And so yes, you had a friend sitting next to you, but how do you feel that our education system did with you? I mean, did you ever get treated poorly because you weren't speaking English as fluently?
Uh, no, I got lucky because I was in a good school. I was in Brooklyn. It was a period of it was an era of immigration. This was back in Ronald Reagan's time, right? So it was a little different than what it is now. Because now it seems like it's frowned upon, right? The immigration for some people. But like I said, I got super lucky. I was able to start school right after we came to the country. I had someone in there. I got lucky to my brother and my sister. My sister was, she didn't have that friend in the room. The teachers were great. I was in the New York public school system, when we first started. And back then it was great. I can't say enough about it. I mean, I had a great journey. And then little by little, my parents started getting to the point where they could put me in a private school system. And from there on, I had a great education. I really can't complain.
That's wonderful. That's actually, unfortunately, seldom what I hear. You know, I often, way too often, actually, hear more of the flip side. I've actually had guests on who have told me that pretty much because they spoke a second language, they were put into special education because of the struggles they were having grasping the language and all the concepts that were being taught to them. So you talked about you think you have dyslexia and it's undiagnosed. What sort of challenges did that present as a child coming through school?
Oh man, I can't tell you. It was very challenging because I remember I was one of those students that as long as I listened to the lecture and the topic was covered in class, you hand me a test and I can beat the test every single time. I never had to study at home except for English. Anything reading and writing, I had a really hard time because for people that aren't familiar, you start flipping letters and you start flipping words in your mind, even though you're reading them the right way in your brain, they get tossed around. So whenever I was reading and writing, like my spelling, um, God bless Google spell check, right? Because I still to this day can't put a good word, I can't spell correctly. And a lot of times it's because I'm flipping those letters around, right? And now as I get older and I've learned to deal with it, I actually catch myself doing it and correct it. But as a young kid, it's really, really hard. And I
Right.
guess I don't have the worst of it. I even see it in my children. They do the similar thing. So it's definitely something that's hereditary. But if you don't know what it is and you don't have someone that can kind of guide you through the problems that you're going through on a daily basis, it's really hard. Because again, English was a second language for me. So it was normal for me to have problems with English, right? Because it was a second language. The problem
Sure.
was that it wasn't really normal. It was something that I was dealing with.
Right. So they blamed it on the language difference
Yep.
and maybe didn't give it the attention that it needed.
Mhm.
And so I'm guessing then, and I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong, that you didn't go through special education at all.
No, I didn't. I went through normal class. And like I said, my grades were super high in math, science, all those I would guess non-grammar, non-English kind of things I was fine with. I was getting super high grades, with little studying, but the English stuff would kill me. I mean, I still remember in my older years, I was having a hard time writing emails, right? When I started working, when I started getting into the business environment, I would have a hard time putting my thoughts on paper. And I had a self-limiting belief that I couldn't write, and I was a terrible reader. And one of the things that I ended up doing just because of my nature is I went after reading more. So at a certain point in my life, I said, you know what? I'm not good at this. I'm just going to keep doing it. I've accumulated over 350 books that I've read in my life that eventually accumulated into writing my own book, which was something that I did for no other reason than to prove to myself that I could do it and for my children, right? Because I wanted to give them a step up from where I came.
Right. That is beautiful. The fact that you wanted to do it just to prove it to yourself that you could do it. And that gives you that drive, I think. And it wasn't because of outside factors. It was, I want to do this for me, is what I heard you say. And so often, I think there is a misconception that if you tell somebody, oh, you're not going to be able to do this, that gives them a push to do better. And to some, that's true. But for so many people, like yourself with dyslexia, you kept going. And I said that like as if you were diagnosed with it, with undiagnosed potential dyslexia. um, that you were like, no, I'm going to do something about this, and it was your own drive that did that, not because I sometimes, the reason I bring this up is because I think people use it as like reverse psychology, like, oh, I'm going to tell you you're not going to, and that's going to get that motivation moving in you. And that's not always the case. It really does need to be, I think, something from inside. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and because I'm one of those people that believes you have to be a life lifelong learner, right?
Mhm.
And as I learned, I got to learn about all these great people, right? And I can't remember all their names, but I know that there's one person that was born with no arms, and she wanted to fly a plane, and everybody told her, you can't, you can't, you can't. And she kept repeating to everybody, the only thing I can't do is say I can't do it. Everything else in life is possible. And she flies. She's a pilot these days, and she does everything with her feet. And it's absolutely astonishing to me. So I've got to meet all these great people throughout my readings, and it gave me the courage to go after. Because the greatest victories in life are the ones that are hard. The easy stuff, it's okay whether you win, you lose, but the hard stuff, that's really cool when you get and you actually beat it.
Yeah, and you know what? And that's profound, but it really is true. I mean, if it comes easily to you, you don't celebrate it. It's just like, oh well. But yeah, if you've had to put any amount of effort into it, it does seem like a bigger victory, a bigger celebration. So I really like that. That's a great way to say it. So you mentioned in your intro that you have several businesses, or you've started several businesses. So how did that come to be? And in the fact that you still think that you struggle with dyslexia.
Well, it was one of those things that it's all about confidence at the end of the day, because I did struggle with it. And I do think that my self-limiting beliefs were in part of me, right? Because I did struggle with the dyslexia. So I did set some things in my mind that weren't true. So when I came out of school, one of the things that I told myself, there's no way I can own a business. And I went to work for somebody else. And I made a lot of people very wealthy because I'm a good employee, and I did more than what I was supposed to. And it wasn't until later on in life, I was about 38 years old, that I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. And I had the confidence, and I said, I am going to sell my house. And this is, I have 5 kids, married, and I gave it all up. I said, you know what, I'm going to keep my family unit intact, but we're going to sell the house, and we're going to struggle for a couple of years. I sat down with my wife, and she gave me her blessing, and we did it. And look, one thing led to another. I am an overachiever, so we didn't start one business. We ended up starting 3 of them.
At the same time?
Yeah, so they
Oh
were
my
they were
goodness.
they were kind of different. Like, one's a consulting company, right? So
Hmm.
a consulting company is one of those things that I just took it just to bring in money to pay the bills,
Hmm.
right? And then I have an IT company, but that one needed time to kind of get up off the ground. Then we have my wife's company, and then all of them just started blooming all at once. And it wasn't immediate, but it did happen quickly. I think in the first 3 years were really hard. We were doing a lot of investing. But it was a will thing. It was a thing where I'm not giving up. There is no failure. There is no way that it's going to beat me. And again, it was the struggles that I had early on that showed me that I could win under these kind of circumstances, and I did it. And today, we're up to 5 businesses. We're going to acquire another one real soon. I don't operate all of them. I operate 3 of them. But and it's not easy. I don't want anybody to think that it's an easy thing. It was foolish to start 3 businesses at once. I think it's better if you put yourself in one. But the only thing I keep telling anybody that asks me, it's like, anything is possible. It's just a matter if you're willing to put the time and effort in, and not put those negative thoughts into your head that are gonna make it less likely for you to succeed.
Right. And I'll be honest, I've been a special education teacher for a lot of years, and I seem to notice that my students, all my I don't teach anymore, so all my former students had more of while they have maybe some self-esteem issues, their ability to fail or do poorly and then pick themselves up and try something else is usually greater than the kids who don't have to struggle through school. And I think that's a good quality to have. But on the flip side of that, I hate that it had to happen to children. That they had to have so much failure or so much um, minimal success to be so resilient.
Yeah. Yeah, Shelley, I think about it this way because it feels bad to see someone else struggle. It does, even whether they're close to you or not. It feels bad. But reality of it is, if you see some of the most successful people out there, their lives weren't easy in the beginning, and it's actually the backwards. There was this, I think it's an old Arabic saying where the prince said that today I drive a Rolls Royce. And, oh no, it starts with a grandfather. It says my grandfather used to ride a camel. My father drove a Ford. Today I drive a Rolls Royce. Tomorrow my children are going to drive a Mercedes and their children are going to drive a Ford. And I hope that it turns around because struggle is what makes you succeed. Struggle is the seed that founders that sense of self, that sense of accomplishment, that sense of I can do anything. And that's what makes really strong people, as long as you have the right mindset. You have to be in a growth mindset. You can't be in a limiting mindset. If you have that growth mindset, which is what you're referring to, right? Those children were there. And it's like, let's fail fast, let's go, let's get to the next thing. And you'll see more success will follow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Fran agrees. She says that that's true. And so tell me about, because I think this is part of what you do for a living, right? Is that you help people live up to their greatest potential, correct?
Yeah, that's why I wrote the book. One of the things I sat down and was in the middle of the businesses were just getting started. Everything was really tough. And I was sitting in my desk with, when you start a business, you don't have that many clients, right? So you have a lot of free time on your hands and to think about, how you're going to pay the rent or the mortgage or whatever. And I'm sitting there and I'm saying, you know what? I read 350 books in my life. I've been through all these different life experiences and there's so many mistakes I made. It's like, I've got 5 children. It's like, how am I going to give them that knowledge so they don't have to start from where I started, maybe start a couple steps up? And that's when I sat down and I wrote out the book, Accessing Your True Potential. And I put categories in there and all different ways of one, improving themselves with these little things they put in their lives, because it's not any one. That's the biggest thing I learned, because I've read a lot of self-help books out there. And it's not any one thing that makes you successful. Like, you can go read a book about sleep needs and how great it is and how great you're going to feel. And that's a good thing. I mean, you have to get good sleep. You have to do the things but it's only one thing. Life is all about putting all these little things into your life, and each one feeds on itself. Nutrition, fitness, effective routines. Then you start going into family and friendships and relationships. You start going to your spiritual and mental health, and then continuous learning. Those are all the things you put into your life. You don't put them in all at once, but little by little by little. And what ends up happening, you start becoming that person that is amazing. You'll actually start surprising yourself, because honestly, I have met so many people that after reading my book, and they've been through a couple of years of doing the things I was telling them, they're like, I never pictured myself being able to do the things I'm doing. Like, they actually didn't think that their best version of themselves was the person they attained. You just got to keep going. You got to keep adding those things into your life.
Yeah, and I have found that in my lifetime. When I was a young girl, when I was 9 years old, I felt like I was supposed to be a general education teacher. And through grade school and high school, that was always the idea. But there was always this little voice that would say, you should work with kids in special education. And I would always have, no, I can't. And I always had a bunch of reasons. And finally, I started working with people who learned differently than I did, and did not realize that would be some of the students, those would be some of the students that I would have had if I went into special education. And then went into getting my special education degree, became a special education teacher, and thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. And I was perfectly happy with that. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, that changed. And so now here I am. Never thought I would be hosting a live stream, not just one, but I have another one. Definitely didn't think about turning it into a podcast, but these get released out as podcasts as well. I'm an entrepreneur. I have my own coaching consulting business. These are not things that I ever anticipated. I never thought I would be an author. Oh, my book is gone. But normally I have a copy of my book sitting right there. Never thought that wasn't in my purview. And so, as long as, just like you said, I think because I was open to doing different things and continuing to figure out ways to reach more people and other people, my path has taken some different turns than I expected. So I
Yeah.
appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, life will guide you if you let it. You know, things will happen in your life, and it's either one of those things where it tells you you shouldn't be doing this, or reaffirming you should be doing this, right? And things change. I mean, I'm right there with you, man. I've been through such a great journey, and life's not over yet. I'm super excited what's ahead, but it's been exactly like that. I was a teacher for 1 year. You know, I taught chemistry and physics when I
Oh wow,
graduated college to high school kids. Loved it. I had a great time, but it wasn't for me, so I just kind of moved on.
I love that though. That someone who believes that you likely have dyslexia, and you were a chemistry and physics teacher. I mean, that to me is a limit busted right there, because if you have your own difficulties reading and comprehending and writing and spelling, to then turn around and teach, be able to, and not just primary grades where the content is a little bit easier, but high school level physics. And I mean, I didn't even try to take those classes because that was beyond my capabilities at that time. Um, so I think that's amazing just in itself. Have you? I'm just kind of curious if you ever have seen the teachers that you had when you were first starting school here in the United States, and do they see where you are now compared to this struggling little boy who didn't know the language?
I haven't seen my elementary. It's a shame because we moved around so much that
Mm.
this is because I live in Dallas, Texas now. And this was back in Brooklyn, and we went from Brooklyn to Staten Island to New Jersey. So I never was in one spot long enough to have those. But I did go back to my high school teachers. I still remember Mr. Mansky, which was my high school math teacher. I mean, and I remember going back to them and speaking with them, and they knew. I mean, they knew because the good teachers, which that was one of the reasons why I stopped teaching, is because I realized that I did not have a degree in it, right? And I was not at the level that I think teachers need to be, because you need to be able to teach to a group of kids in different ways, the way they learn, right? And I learned that over time. It's a skill, like it's an amazing skill to have. One person is more of an experiential learner. One person needs to write stuff down. Another person needs to listen to things. But you have a group of 20, 30, 50 kids, and you're going to have to teach to each one of them individually. So it's a very impressive skill, in my opinion. And it was something that I didn't have, but it's really cool when you can do it.
Yeah, and I worked with a lot of different teachers over the years, and some of them embraced the challenge of reaching as many different students as they could, and others didn't. And I was always disappointed in the ones who didn't embrace it, because it wasn't something, as a special education teacher, that's truly what special education teachers are experts in, is being able to differentiate
Mhm.
all the different material and make the accommodations and modifications. And I felt like I learned that as I went, that I kind of, just what I said, I embraced the challenge of figuring out, okay, well, this one needs this way, and this one needs the auditory, and this one needs the visual, and this one needs all the things that you said, the experiences. And it always disappointed me that some of the people that I worked with didn't accept that challenge, because I felt like they were not only stifling the students' growth, but their own growth.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, and that was definitely something that it's not in my tool bag. I tried, and I did a pretty good job. Um, I went to other teachers and said, how do you do that? How do you actually, it's like, because day one, you have to categorize them, right? So it's one of the things you got to go in there and kind of figure out, how do they learn? And it takes a couple weeks. But I was not very good at it. I like doing stuff with the kids, which kind of checks off more than one box, right? So we would do a lot of projects because then they can shine in what they were good. And you'll see, you put a group of 4 kids together and you have the right 4 kids, and they'll split up the things in the way they like to learn and the way they like to do things. So we're having fun.
Right.
We built bridges and threw eggs off roofs and crazy things like that.
That's awesome. That I get. I like the part of that in physics, but I don't know that I had enough. I still don't know that I have enough of it to go if I was to try to go take it now and learn all of the stuff. But I think that's an excellent idea. Is you try to teach, and I think in general this is what teachers do. You teach to the majority in one specific way, but then you have maybe some different ways to have the children repeat to you what they know or express to you what they know. And I think group projects is a good way to do that because of exactly what you said. So do you mind? So I'm sorry, I kind of skipped and now I'm coming back to and this is my brain, how it works. So going back to your businesses, the book itself, are you okay sharing more specifically some of the ideas that you put in there that you want your children and everybody else to use to attain their best selves?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I talk about in the very beginning of the book is I take everybody through a little thought exercise. I say, think about the one time you were in that meeting or in that event or in that place where you just knocked it out of the park, right? And you're like, wow, that was me. And then you think back to another time where you had a similar experience, but you weren't that good. And I've had these happen in my life. And one of the things that drove me was, why? I'm the same person. Why am I at such a high level this time and not at such a high level this time? What happened? Why did I get nervous here and I didn't get nervous there? And that took me on a questioning, right? And I started reading books. I started to cover different topics. And I ended up reading a whole bunch of books. And one of the things that I learned is, like I said before, there's not one thing that you put into your life. It's a groupings of things. And if you do these things and you keep doing them, and I've categorized them into 4 wheels. I have the health wheel, I have the peace wheel, I have the clarity wheel, and the power wheel, right? And the health wheel is broken up into 2 pillars, nutrition and fitness, right? If you're healthy, which health takes 2 very important things. It takes nutrition, put the right things in your body, make sure you eat correctly, don't eat poisons, take those poisons out of your life, sugar and vegetable oil are 2 big ones, right? And fitness. And when I mean fitness, it doesn't mean that you have to be a power lifter or you have to be this great athlete. It's just move. Make sure you don't have a sedentary life. And there were so many different ways of doing that, right? I used to be 350 pounds, morbidly obese. Yeah, and I was in rough shape. And one of the things that I remember is at one point I had my kids and I was like, I can't be like this anymore. And I said, but I had a hard time getting up from the couch, right? So you're talking about fitness to a guy that has a hard time getting up from the couch. So I just taught myself, I'm going to get up from the couch and I'm just going to walk around the block. And that walking around the block turned into walking twice around the block. And then eventually it was walking around the lake. And eventually it was a title boxing membership, which turned into a gym membership, right? So, and all this kind of helped me get going. Now, you don't have to get all the way to the point that you're in the gym. You could do just walking around, just get yourself moving. You'll see you'll feel better. But when you have your nutrition and you have your fitness, then you'll have health. When your body's healthy as it can be, right? Because we all deal with different things. I have a heart condition that I deal with, right? I fit that fitness within the realms of what my body can do. Then you move on to the next wheel, which is the clarity wheel. The way you get clarity of mind is to have effective routines in your life. And there's a slew of them that I talk about. There's your wake up routine, your go to bed routine, your work start, your day started routine. There's so many routines that you could put into your life now. Journaling, and there's how many books you're going to read. There's so many different things you put in there, but you put those in your mind and you get clarity of mind. Then you move down to the peace wheel. Peace wheel has 2 very important pillars. One is family and relationships, which are crucial. If your relationships are not going well, whether that's a significant other or brother, sister, or friend, those things will affect you. There's a part of the book that I talk about negative people. And when they're not family members, I tell you, walk away from them. You don't need those people in your life. their family, it's a little harder. There's things, I give you little tricks in the book because you can't really walk away from family.
Right.
And then you get into spiritual and mental health, right? Keeping this up here healthy is a difficult thing, to say the least. Anxiety and depression hits us all. And knowing how to deal with those things, which, by the way, nobody teaches you. I don't care if it's a public or private school. Nobody teaches you those
Right.
those coping habits, right? But getting that in your life, I use meditation, prayer. There's different things you can put in your life to deal with those. Counseling when you need it. You will get peace of heart. Once you have peace in your heart, you can move on to continuous learning, which is my favorite wheel. There's a multitude of ways of learning, reading books, podcasts, TV and internet could be a means of learning, right? If used correctly. You put those in your life and then you go back to health. Let's add something else into your health wheel. Let's add something else into your clarity wheel. Let's add something else into your peace wheel. And then you can just keep going around and around. And you'll be amazed at the person you become.
It sounds so simple, but I know it's not.
No.
But I do like that you just add one thing and then you get that one kind of solid and then you move on to the next thing.
Yep. Yeah. And that's really important. So I cover two things in the book that are really important before I get into the wheels and the pillars. And the two things are the 80% rule, and then just get started, but start slow, right? You don't have to, like, anybody that's tried to do, and this happens with the gym. Every January, everybody goes to the gym, gets a gym membership. It's like, I'm going to the gym, and they try to go 5 days a week, right? And then most of them are done going by February. The idea is not to do it that way, right? 10 minutes a day or 10 minutes 3 times a week, whatever is comfortable to you, just because you want to make it a habit. Once you make something a habit, you could add a little more to it. And this is not something you're going to get done in 2-3 months. The idea is a lifetime goal, right? So you put those little things. The other thing is the 80% rule. I tell people never, never, never give 100%. You could give 100% in some things when you want to, like you have this great day, you're feeling great. But the real thing is at least 80%, right? Like, for instance, when I like talking about nutrition just because of my experience. Dieting is hard. If you take everything away from you and you can't have any of the foods you like, the chances of you succeeding are going to be very, very little. What you do is eat the same stuff you're eating today, just eat 80% of it, and watch what happens, right? Just have eggs and bacon. Just don't have 20 strips, have 2 strips of bacon. Do that 80% all the way through, and that'll give you a little bit of start. And then little by little, you start adding more vegetables, you start taking away the fat, but you do it slowly over time, and you'll see the benefits are unbelievable.
And I think that's so important, and also the biggest downfall for people, because we, especially in today's society, are very instant. I'm not patient. I need to have results right now. And so, yeah, when you're saying add one thing at a time, I mean, we're talking months, years for the changes. But the one thing that a mentor of mine says is progress over perfection. Mm-hmm. And when I first heard that, that was such a big revelation for me, because I was more of the do it 100%. And so I always felt like every time I started something new, whether it was going to the gym or eating better or, reading more or whatever, that I had to be perfect at it right at the beginning. And you don't. It's a new thing. It's a new skill. It's a new habit. And if you were already perfect at it, you would already be doing it. And I had to get that sort of mindset in my head that it's okay to go along and then look back and say, oh, a month ago, this isn't how good I was doing. But now I'm, even it like the gym, my husband and I started going to the gym a few years ago. And we just were like, okay, we're gonna pay for the gym membership, so that motivates us to go, because I'm very much a return on my money thing. And it was, well, okay, as long as we go once a week, that's better than we were doing before. And then we started seeing and feeling better after 1 time a week. And so then we increased it to 2 times a week. And I'm not going to say that we're perfect at going even 2 times a week every week, but we don't cut ourselves down terribly, because we're still going more now than we were before we joined the gym a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and that's all you need. I mean, honestly, you'd be amazed at how much benefit that has, right? In that book, Atomic Habits, he makes a point of 1% better every time you try, right? You don't do, and if you do the math on it, 1% better over a year comes out to be like 347%, right? As compared to,
Right?
if you do 100%, you're probably going to burn out and be nothing. It's
Right.
compounding interest all over again. Is anybody that knows anything about saving money? It's not about saving $100,000 today. It's about saving $10 every day, right? And then you'll see how
Right.
much money you have. Same thing with your efforts. Your efforts 1% every day, 1% more. Just do 1% more, and you'll see how much better you become.
Yeah. And absolutely. And for someone who was a perfectionist like myself, that was a difficult concept for me to really grasp and accept for myself. And so I appreciate those reminders from people to progress over perfection. 1%, or there's a one of the wall murals at the gym is stronger than yesterday, you
Yep.
know, and that's all that matters. I used to try to do planks, and it was always just do 1 second longer each day than the day before. And yeah, all of a sudden, you're up to several minutes, and I shouldn't say all of a sudden, months down the road, you're up to several minutes. But because you kept doing it, and then you give yourself grace. I think that's very important in anybody's life. Is I know for me, I was always good at handing grace out, but never keeping any for myself.
Yeah, man. I'm the same way. I am so good at helping others and I'm so bad myself. I mean, in my head, I'm like the biggest bully. So to myself, right? I'm like,
Right.
no, you gotta do more. Go, go. You can't be that way.
Yeah, it's so true. So very true. So, what other pieces of advice? I mean, the fact that you came here and you didn't speak English, you feel like you quite likely have dyslexia, and so all through school you struggled, and you've read 350 books or more, probably more, um, and and so what other advice do you have to give to people from your own story?
I would say that the biggest life lesson that I like to tell people, which some people kind of shy away from, but fail fast and fail often. I mean, you have to embrace failure, not to the point that you're okay with it. You never want to get to the point that you're okay with failure. You have to get to the point that you take failure as what it is, a lesson, right? Do it fast. Don't flounder in it. Don't try to keep something that's dying alive when it's done, right? But always keep going. Don't stop. Keep trying new things. Eventually, you'll find your passion. You'll find your thing, and it changes over time, right? That something you may be passionate about today may not be tomorrow. But just keep going, keep failing, and then take the lessons that those failures teach you. I must have failed easily 100 times more than I've succeeded, but the successes are awesome. They make you forget about all those other times.
Right. And exactly, when you think about all the famous people, and you get all these famous athletes and these famous actors and actresses, and, even some of our presidents, and that's what we look up to them. Oh, they're so good at being, whatever their role is. But then when you start deep diving into their lives, and you see how many times they failed and then they got back up and they tried it a little bit different way, or they tried it with a different group of people, or they whatever, but they kept trying to make progress and keep moving forward. The old saying, and it's the older I get, and maybe this happens to everybody, the more truth I find in things that I was told as a child. The slow and steady wins the race. Well, if you take that, it's, I think it applies to what you said. Like, don't give up. Don't race through. Don't be perfect right away. Just keep making small steps towards the finish line.
Yeah, and you know what? One more important point to make to that is when you do have that success, celebrate it, enjoy it, because that's the other thing that we fail to do is because we're such a rush. We brush through the successes in our life, but we have plenty of successes to celebrate. but enjoy those for the minute that you got it right.
Yeah, absolutely. So is it okay if we talk a little bit more about, maybe talk about your kids, and because you said you
Yeah.
think that they have dyslexia, a couple of them, and so what is it that they are going through and some things that they have already overcome?
So I see it in their handwriting. One of the things that I definitely see is they'll flip those letters around, and just because I know what I've been through, I know what
Right.
I'm looking at. It's not that bad. So I think that my youngest, I'm gonna have to get tested because he may be one of the worst. I think it's a little more than something he could deal with on his own, but I don't know. The judge is still out on that. But
Right.
we're keeping an eye on that because he's not reading as much as the others. Um, the first three, I didn't see any of those problems, but my fourth and my last child definitely have a little bit of it. But like I said, I learned to deal with it. It's definitely I don't because I also don't want to make it a big deal. I don't want it to
Right.
overcome their life, right? I do acknowledge it. I mean, I speak frankly about it in front of them. It's not something to hide from them either,
Right.
because just like eyesight, right? We have to learn how to cope with it, right? So we get glasses or
Right.
whatever it is. It's the same thing. We're gonna have to deal with it. But right now, I think they'll be fine. But I do see them flipping those letters around a couple times, and they'll do it. My youngest one will also flip the letters around. So when he's actually handwriting, now not sure if that's a thing because of this new education system that they're walking away from handwriting and everything is typed, right? That could do it too.
Right.
Um, but we'll see.
Yeah. Oh gosh, there was something that you just said in there, and I wanted to bring it back up, and now my thoughts just they went somewhere else down the path. I think maybe, like you said, the handwriting issue, cursive. There's
Yeah.
some things that we have gotten rid of over the years, or that, and I'll be honest, I was one who was like, we don't write checks anymore, and really that was the main reason that people used cursive. But now I have second thoughts about that. That, gosh, no, there are documents that are written in cursive, and if we don't teach people how to read cursive, how will they ever get to read our Constitution or the Declaration of
Yeah.
Independence? Things that were not typed.
Yeah.
They won't ever be able to read those original documents. Um, so I appreciate you sharing about your children, and I very much appreciate what you said about the glasses, because my friend and I were just talking about that this morning. How, yes, you and I both have the same accommodation, and that's what I call these, is an
Mhm.
accommodation. But even within that accommodation of having glasses, I can hand you my glasses and you can give me yours, and I doubt that they are the exact same prescription. So even within those accommodations, or even, if you did give the eligibility or the diagnosis of dyslexia, it's theirs won't necessarily be the same as yours was. And like you said, you think that your youngest one is struggling, it's more intense with him than maybe it was with you. And so I appreciate that and I thought it was just really interesting that you use glasses, because so often that is one of the main ones that I use when I'm talking about people not wanting to provide accommodations to employees or to students or to their family members. Is, well, that just makes it easier for them. And then I say, well, my glasses make it clear for me. It gives me access. It helps me to do things better. It doesn't make it easier. And so I just found that really interesting that you use glasses as your example there. So again, I want to thank you, and I want to make sure, because we are kind of done a little earlier than the full extent of time that we could use. So I want to make sure, because you've got time, that you have shared what you wanted to share today, because I try to let my guests tell their story the way they want to tell it, and I want to make sure you've had that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, if you get nothing else from what I've said is no matter what you're dealing with in life, you can do anything you want. You just got to fight for it. You got to want it. And it's really about the effort that you put in there. And everyone is struggling with something. I guarantee you, there is no perfection out there at all, right? So,
Right.
and even the people that we look up to, like you were saying before, they've had their struggles in their life. You don't celebrate those struggles, so most people won't put it out there. But start reading their books and start reading their stories, and you'll see a lot of it has been struggling. Even Elon Musk, he's the richest person in the world, and he's had some close calls where, he could have been nothing, right? Just because.
Right.
But he kept fighting. So you got to keep fighting. Life's a game, man. Just enjoy it.
Yeah. So I do have a website. Is this the website if somebody wants to get a hold of you, that this is how they would do it?
Yeah, I'm all over LinkedIn. So the best place to get me is on LinkedIn. But yeah, I have multiple websites, from deskside.com to konsulere.com, accessingyourtruepotential.com. But from one of those sites, you could find the rest of them. I'm all over the place.
Okay, so I will be sure to put all of those in the show notes when it comes out as a podcast, but I will try to go in as the live stream and just put these, all those different sites into the chat so that people can find you to access you. And where would they go to get your book? Just any of these websites?
Yeah, it's on Amazon, it's on Audible, It's on every single channel you can think of, but accessingyourtruepotential.com is our website. If you go there, you fill out, they'll give you the PDF of the workbook for free. So you could just take a look at what you want to get yourself into. And then Amazon, you could order the soft copy, hard copy of either one.
So, okay, I just typed this. Let me see if this is right. Did you say accessing your true potential?
Yep, that's it.
Okay. Accessingyourtruepotential.com. Okay. Right. So I've got that one in there. I just need to go in and put so I've got that one, and I've got your desk side one. And then I just need to go in and put in the other one. Well, Vittorio, thank you so much for being with me today. I've enjoyed learning about your journey, and Fran said thank you as well. I don't know if I put it up there or not. Yeah, there we go. And so I appreciate you, Fran, for being with us today and sharing in and piping in with your comments. Join me next week. I will be talking with someone from Miriam Academy in St. Louis, Missouri. I had an opportunity to tour the school a few weeks ago, and holy wow, is it amazing. It really is reaching our different learners in the most amazing way, and I can't wait to share them with you. Thank you so much again, Vittorio, for joining me, and I will see you all next time.
Thank you.